Okay. I think we're ready to go. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to NewGenPolitics, another live stream. And as you can see by the title, today I want to talk about something pretty interesting that happened yesterday, which is Candace Owens openly talking about how she converted to Catholicism. Now this is, some people may be wondering, why is this a big issue? Or why is this a big deal at all? Is it just kind of like a cheeky little fact? Is it kind of just, you know, something you can brag about on social media? Oh, another win for the Christians, right? I think not. I think it's significantly deeper and very representative of something that's going to happen continuously more in the future. Because right now, happening in America is there's this battle for young people as we see this reversal towards religion. Because we were very much going against religion for a long time, and now we've seen this very clear reversal of religion in the last couple years. And what's going to happen with that is, whose religion are people choosing, right? Like there's this kind of now new agnosticism. People say there's something, right? Like there's good and evil, there's a God. We got to go back. We got to base our society around some form of morality. And most people in their head think it was going to be some sort of just, you know, Christianity in general, right? Big umbrella term Christianity. No, what's actually going to happen is there's going to be a fight for the youth in America between two major religions, Catholicism and Islam. Those two is what's happening right now. Is you're seeing a lot of people who are popular icons in Gen Z and the millennials who are turning to one of these two religions. On Islam, you see Andrew Tate, Sneeko, some other popular Twitch streamers kind of embracing Islam in the West as the solution to our problems. And on the other hand, you see this more strong push towards Catholicism with people like Candace Owens and Russell Brand and some other, you know, notable people mentioning Catholicism, turning more towards Catholicism. So why Catholicism, right? If you're a Christian, why pick Catholicism? Or why Islam? What is the reasoning there? What's the rationale, right? They're very different, but for some reason these two stand out. And it's for one major reason: the seriousness of these religions. How serious is their doctrine? How serious do the people take it? Because right now, the people who are struggling to find faith, they find faith because they're struggling, because they look at the world and they say something is wrong here. I'm behaving poorly, my results are poor in my everyday life, I see clear signs of evil, which means there must be a good, and I'm just lost. I don't know what to do. I want someone to tell me what to do. Like, how did I end up in my mess of a life, my terrible situation, whatever it is? I'm miserable because of social media, because of diet, because of, you know, lack of purpose, because of all these different aspects. And so you find religion, and what attracts you when you're in a state of misery and somebody extends their hand is them saying, I understand your problem, and it's a real problem, and you need a real solution. And the solution is overhauling your whole life. You need God. You've gone against God drastically. Your life is a disaster because of it, because you don't follow him or his doctrines, and you need to get on this regimen to fix your life, right? That's what these young people want, is they want to be told that you're miserable for a reason and this is why. And that's that seriousness argument is God's not just like some concept, it's like God is real. He is real. You follow him or you're gonna have a bad time. And you're having a bad time because you're not following him. And so Islam is very attractive right now for that reason, is because Muslims take their religion very, very seriously. Very seriously, right? Like, a lot of things are punishable by death seriously. And so when somebody sees that and they see like what Andrew Tate calls the matrix, everything around them is fake. Everything around them is vapid. Their whole life is terrible. It's falling apart. Nothing has any meaning. And singing Jesus is your best friend is not serious, and it's not what's attracting people. What's attracting people is like you're living in a completely different world than like what you need to be. Like you're over here, you need to be over here. This is the serious part that you're missing. Like overhaul your whole life. Like this is life or death stuff. It really is. And so Islam is very, very attractive because of that. Very, very attractive right now. And so a lot of young men, specifically young men, are switching to Islam because they take it seriously. When somebody says God's real, they're living out their faith. They're following the rules of their religion. Now, Islam's certainly not preferable over Christianity. I'm not saying it is, but it's attracting people for that reason, that it is taken very, very seriously. And they're living by example, right? They practice what they preach. Like you pray every day. You have to, multiple times a day. And we will make sure you do. And you have to fast. There's a rigid structure to this religion. And the rigidity is what people crave, right? Like children crave structure. Everybody's heard that, right? And then in the children's manuals you read, and just like psychiatrists and everybody talking about this, psychologists, that like children crave structure. Structure is what allows you to have the same meals every day at the same time. It allows you to meet the same people every day. It allows you to have bath time at the same time every day. And that structure in between those like like those structured parts of your day is when you're allowed to experience freedom as like a child. That's what it is. Like the Jordan Peterson was talking about this. You run away from mom to go play, but mom's in your view, right? Mom or dad, they're right there. The safety's there. The rigidity of the structure is there. No matter how bad a day it is, I eat right at 5 o'clock, and 5 o'clock every day, and it's comforting to have that structure. And people don't grow out of that. People crave structure. And a lot of these people who have kind of childlike conceptions of how the way the world works, because they're lost in the wind. They're like a kid without a parent. They don't have any strong basis for their beliefs. They don't have a strong, rigid structure to their life. It's very attractive to have a religion that says, this is what you need to do. This is how you live out your life. Like you follow these rules and your life's going to be good. This is structure. And so right now, for the past couple months, I would have said Islam is kind of winning that war. And I think in the long run, Catholicism is going to win that war in the attraction of people, because the ideology is better. There's a lot less materialism to Catholicism than Islam. Islam is very much there's a lot of worldly pleasures involved that you're like rewarded with, right? Like and Catholicism is more idealistic of like you do what you do, what's called of you, and then when you die, that is where your reward is. Like there's good things that happen in life. There's the avoidance of the natural consequence of sin, right? Like if you're not causing problems for yourself, your life's already going to be better. But like God is not guaranteeing things in your life, because sometimes like you're not called to enjoy certain pleasantries. And so I think that ideal is going to beat out Islam. I mean, most of the country is Christian anyways, and you can see this massive like upsurgence in Catholicism. I think this year they had like the most converts to Catholicism in decades, because like the Protestantism, a lot of the Protestant sects are getting further and further away from the truth, right? They're incorporating more aspects of this relativism, this liberalism. Like even the Methodists are breaking up again because certain parts of them want to split away. And the stronghold of Christianity for the last 2,000 years has been Catholicism, has been the like strict rule follower, the most basis for their beliefs, like the most intricate kind of map of how you live your life. And so that is going to beat out Islam, in my opinion. And so why is this? How does any of this have to do with Candace Owens, right? Like, is she just another person? Well, Candace has a huge audience. She's very popular. Not only is she popular, she's a rising star. She's been gaining popularity more and more and more, and also respect from a lot of people who have her on say she's very respectful. She debates coherently and respectfully. She's not afraid to speak her voice. Very not afraid to speak her voice, actually. I mean, you look at how she got fired from the Daily Wire for doing just that. You know, questioning the morality of some of Israel's decisions and our financial backing of those decisions got her fired. And she said, that's fine, right? Like, she moved on. And that's is symbolic of this rise in religion, right? Like, I will be persecuted for my beliefs, and I'm going to stick to it. And so Candace converting brings this big audience with her. Same thing with Tammy Peterson, Jordan Peterson's wife. Jordan Peterson might convert to Catholicism soon. I would not be surprised if this year Jordan Peterson converts to Catholicism. And more and more and more people will be converting to Catholicism because it is the stronghold. It's like the stronghold of Christianity. And I think every other religion is out of the race. It's Catholicism and Islam is your two options, right? Like, if you want structure, if you want truth, if you want a coherent worldview, because that's what Catholicism offers, way beyond other Christian religions, is a coherent worldview, right? Like, it's not just the Bible. The Bible, obviously, huge basis for Catholicism, but we also have tradition. You know, we have the saints to look to as role models. We have the church that has given decisions and declarations on things that were clearly never addressed in the time of Jesus. Think like you're looking at things now, like AI. What's the line between art and pornography? Things like that can be top-down, coherently stated and enforced throughout the entire Catholic Church. Like, you have that authority, but that authority comes in layers, and that layer is, you know, subservient. And so the one Holy Catholic Apostolic Church, and it's one connected, it's a universal church. And so that is going to be very appealing to people, is it gives them a coherent worldview, gives them structure. They're lost in the ocean. You're in the middle of the ocean. You have no idea how you got there. Your life's a disaster. You're miserable. You can't even see land. No conception of where you need to go first. How do I even start to fix my life? Somebody offers you a coherent worldview. And so that is building on the right, is this coherent worldview. And a unifying part of the right for the longest time was the Republican Party. Right? That makes sense, right? Like, oh, that's dumb. Why would you say that? That's just makes sense, right? Well, yes and no. Obviously, the Republican Party is where all conservatives go to be part of the group. That's the group, is the Republican Party. The Republican Party is dying as an institution because, Trump killed it, right? Like, Trump took it over and said, this is my party, and you guys, like, I own the house now. I invite you over. If you want to be part of my group, you're going to be part of my group. But so the Republican Party is having tons of infighting. As an institution, it's failing. I mean, even look at like all the infighting we've already removed one speaker this year, and we're probably going to do it again because they just can't help themselves from funding Israel and Ukraine over, protecting our border and helping our citizens. But that overhaul in the Republican Party has left it baseless, right? Like there's no connecting point. There's all these different people, right? Like you have people from like Ben Shapiro to Tucker Carlson to, like a Republican legislators, all these different people, these different groups, Fox News, all these different groups of people spread all over like a map. And they have one connecting point, which is the Republican Party. But the Republican Party has become too vast. It's a hollow shell of what it used to be. It has no basis in its beliefs and no coherent worldview. Like the Republican beliefs are, let's keep the country how it was 80 years ago, and we're going to put band-aids on issues. Like when an issue comes up, we'll say, we like this, we don't like this. X thing. But that's not a worldview. A worldview is not like certain opinions on certain actions. It is like a full-on, like, I believe in God. Like God is the center of morality, basis of society. Our society should be structured like this. We have these virtues, like the prominent virtues, like freedom of speech, free commerce, like those basis of society, and then you build out from there. And that extends into things that are so niche. Like, how do we interact with nature? You know, what is our morality on certain types of animal groups? What is problems that we're facing that we need to fix? Like our relationship with environmental energy, our relationship with nature. How do we handle the bee crisis? How do we handle the microplastic crisis? Like, it's like a layered circle that extends outward. And there's a core. And the Republican Party doesn't have that core anymore. There's not like a worldview. It's just opinions. You see people all the time. I've seen it all over the internet recently on like Daily Wire video comments and article postings of just the Republicans just judge. They just judge things. They say, "Oh, that's terrible. I wouldn't do that," or "I don't support that," and they don't give solutions. Like, when was the last time a Republican gave a solution that wasn't an opinion, right? Like, "Oh, I just think abortion's bad." It's like, okay, cool. I do too, but also there's a lot that goes into that. Like, just saying, "Oh, like, ban abortion." Okay, cool. Like, we should do that, but what do you do with single mothers who have to raise these children? Like, what do you do with like the care of these children in society? Like, there's a big problem there. What about the adoption system? If you're like, "Oh yeah, just give them up for adoption." Well, the adoption system's a mess. Maybe we should handle that. And so a coherent worldview looks at connected issues. Everything's connected. Republicans are not doing that. And so you need a connected base. You need a base and a new group and a new core. Like, that core is gone. It's like hollow earth theory, right? Like the hollow Republican Party. That new core is Catholicism. It was evangelical Protestantism for basically the entirety of America, but it's been rotten away by relativism and liberalism. There's no strong conviction. There's no core. That core is dead. And so where are people flocking to? Catholicism. That remaining core, that belief that has been tucked away like a sleeping giant for the last several hundred years, basically. Like, Catholicism is not a weak religion, but it was not an enforced religion. It has all the basis to be the strongest religion on the planet, and I would still argue it is, but it doesn't enforce the way it should. Like, we don't say, you know, like, Catholics don't have Catholic nepotism, right? Like there should be a solid Catholic nepotism that happens in the country, right? Like, the belief, if you believe these things, you should enforce your beliefs through your legislation, through your principles, through your media. And so that core of Catholicism is going to take over. And that's why you see people flooding to it, because it's serious. And it's the new group. It's the new fad, right? It's beyond a fad, but stay with me if you get what I mean. Candace Owens, Russell Brand, Mark Wahlberg, all these people are like becoming more openly Catholic. People are converting to Catholicism. You're getting a lot more young priests who are very solid. They're using social media, like Father Mike Schmitz, even Bishop Barron, who's constantly talking to Jordan Peterson. Numerous young priests on TikTok, on Instagram, on podcasts, things like Pints with Aquinas. And that growing shift to this new core. Like, if you want to be part of the group, you used to be evangelical Protestant, like a Protestant. If you want to be part of the group now, you are Catholic. You will be Catholic. That's like what the group is. That's the basis, is like, our politics are not based on the Republican Party, and you join the Republican Party and you believe like, oh, like overnight, you know, the ghost of Ronald Reagan comes down and possesses you, and you're like, oh my gosh, we need less taxes and we should ban abortion and, you know, walls. You know, it's not like that. Like, it's like, you need a worldview. You need a reason to believe the things you believe. Like, you have to have a basis for your opinions. And I think a lot of Republicans just wanted to be part of the group, and they didn't have a basis for their beliefs. Other than like, oh, my dad believed it, so, or like, I watch Fox News and they say this is bad, so I should believe those things. No, ground up, coherent worldview. Like, built up on layers, out of core, expanded outward, core, Catholicism. And it's going to fight off Islam. But you're seeing, like, over here, there's another circle, and that's Islam. Islam is rising in America. Not only because of, and the West in general, this applies to the whole West, like, not just America, the whole Western world. But not just, like, Islam is rising, and not just because we're letting in a lot of, like, Muslim immigrants, like Islamic immigrants. it's because like young men are converting to it. They see the seriousness of it. It takes itself seriously. They see the faith of it, right? Like nobody likes a boss or a leader, and no one wants to follow anything that's not serious, right? Like doesn't take itself seriously, especially when it claims to, right? Like God, the creator of the universe, will eventually judge you for eternal life or eternal damnation. There's literally nothing more serious. And then people are like, oh, you know, he's your best friend, and like Jesus wouldn't judge you, and you can do whatever you want, and there's no rules. Like there's guidelines, but there's no rules. It's like, no, there's rules. The rules, very many rules. And that's what people want, is they want rules, because their life sucks without rules. There's no structure, like a child in the wind. There's no structure. They want structure. And so that's what's going to happen. And Candace Owens is being like one of the most prominent conservative speakers. Having this audience of young people is going to cause a massive, massive shift. And not only a massive shift in people converting to Catholicism, but the more outspokenness of Catholicism. So young people starting podcasts, starting YouTube channels and Instagram channels and Twitter, you know, Twitter feeds, becoming more outspoken about their religion because it's more socially acceptable, right? Like nobody wants to get on the ground floor of any movement. Being on the ground floor sucks. Like you're a big target, you know, if it doesn't work out, yeah, you know, it's really bad. So people don't like to get on the ground floor typically, but they might get on the second floor. You know, we're like ground floor, and then you have like Candace Owens and some of the people now, and then like Russell Brand's getting on, and then you're gonna have like more and more people as it becomes more socially acceptable, right? Like easy comparison, look at cancel culture. How many people were fighting against cancel culture? Not very many, because they were scared, because they were in the minority, because they could threaten your life, like your livelihood. They could get you fired, they could get you canceled, you couldn't go out in public. And the more people who challenged it, the easier it was to challenge it. You had more friends, you had less of direct targeting, because there's more people to target, kind of disperses the aggression towards you. And the same thing with religion, is the more people who are openly religious and are like, yes, my entire life is based on this thing, it's going to change a lot of people's minds. It's going to show the seriousness of it. When you're serious, like if you go out on a date and you're like, they're like, oh, are you very religious? Like, yes, that is literally like the basis of my beliefs. You don't have to be like, you know, you don't have to be annoying about it, but it should always be like, yeah, I just won't do that thing. Or like, I do this thing. Like, I just go to mass every Sunday. I pray every day. Like, I have to have time to fit in my rosary or my holy hour. There's, if you're open about it and there's structure and there's seriousness, that's what attracts people, right? Like the number one way of evangelization is through your just being you, just being a role model. And that might sound kind of like cringe, like a little bit, you know, like say, oh, just be a role model, right? It's like, don't show off. Like, don't be a role model to show off, right? Like, you just do your thing. And people will say, what, like, you're just happy. Why are you happy? What do you got going on? You're just like, yeah, I just, like, religion is so fundamental to my happiness and my lifestyle. That's the secret. And people who are lost in the woods, who are, you know, out in the wilderness, might give it a try. And so I think this is a very good thing, a very important thing that's happening now. You're having just this widespread adoption of Catholicism and religion as a whole, and it's going to shake not only of the Republican Party but all the entire country, because beyond just the religious aspects of it, like you're going to shift culturally, right? Like the religion is going to extend outward. I think people are sick of saying separate church and state, because church and state was never meant to be separate. Like, let's not joke. Like let's not pretend that's a real thing. The separation of church and state is to protect the church from the state, not vice versa. And I mean, that's pretty clear from the founding fathers, all their documents mentioning God and everything, and all their written letters, but it's going to extend outwards. and people are going to be unapologetically, I support this because of my religion. Like the Republicans right now, the conservatives, as you would call them, the rhinos, they'll say, oh, well, I don't support that, but I support their freedom to do it. And like, oh, I think it's personally I'm against it, but you know, I want the minority to rule, you know, like if a majority of people are opposed to something and there's a small group that wants it, then, you know, who am I to tell them what to do? It's like, no, like you clearly don't believe in what you're grifting you say you believe in, right? Like, oh, I believe in God, but I won't enforce any of his principles. It's like, why do we as Christians not have the ability to openly enforce our worldview on other people when that's all the Democrats do? That's all the liberals do. That's all the atheists do. The atheists enforce their morality based on atheism on everybody else. As they say, God's not real, and so you can't use God to influence other people's lives. That's anti-religious. That's anti-you. That's going against your beliefs. They're saying, because our God is not having a God, or our God is democracy and liberalism, that if you're not liberal, you're not respecting our God. And we're going to use our God as our basis for all our beliefs, which impact all our actions. Like, you cannot separate your beliefs from your actions. Like, your actions are always influenced by your beliefs. Let's stop pretending that they're not. Let's stop pretending that, like, we're the better people, right? Like, Republicans are the better people because we get stepped on, and it's, you know, imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. It's like, that's the stupidest logic. And they're like, oh, someday people are going to realize Republicans are the, you know, Democrats are the real racists. It's like, oh my gosh, how long have I heard that? Like, nobody thinks that. So this kind of Christian weakness that has persisted for the last several decades, that has allowed politicians to, specifically on the Republican side, to totally forget their religion, totally forget their convictions, allowed us to, like, have the country be eaten away at, because they say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have religion in state. But here's the thing about religion. The same way that inaction is an action, like if you have two choices and you choose not to choose, that's a choice. If you don't have a religion, that's a religion. Like, the absence of religion is a religion. It's not neutral. That's a fallacy to think that, like, it's neutral. It's like, no, your worldview is based on there is no God. That's not neutral. That changes everything about how you perceive the world. And so Christians, serious Christians, remember that seriousness that's coming up, are going to influence the country based on their religion, unapologetically. Screw cancel culture, screw what they call us, screw the name calling. It's time for Republicans to go back on the offensive. And not Republicans, because, you know, Republican Party's dead. Conservatives. It's time for conservatives to go back on the offensive and say, I'm right and you're wrong. If I'm in power, I'm going to influence society based on my beliefs because I'm right. How is that hard? How is that bad? I mean, like, the Democrats do it all the time. At least they practice what they preach. You know, they do exactly what they tell you they're going to do. They believe they're in the right, so they do it. And, you know, Republicans are moral cowards. They refuse to enforce their beliefs. They refuse to even practice their beliefs. And they say, oh, I'm a better man because I don't let my faith in God taint my beliefs, taint my actions. It's like, really? You're going to say God taints your actions? Like, your belief in God is misleading you from doing the right thing? What? It's like, that's the... What? It doesn't make any sense, right? Like, when you put it that way, it doesn't make any sense logically. Like, you say you're a Christian, and at the same time you say God gets in the way of doing the right thing. You're not a Christian. You're Christian in name only. You know, like the rhinos. Because you're also a rhino. You're nothing. Like, you have no basis for anything you believe in. Honestly, I think you're just there to get a paycheck and write a couple books, which is probably most Republicans anyways. So this, young generation who takes this stuff seriously, who's willing to be martyred for their beliefs, like Candace Owens. Like, Candace Owens is really the front runner of like taking on this aggression and even challenging her own party, right? Like, that's an important part of being somebody who is a fair thinker. Like, somebody who has beliefs in their ideas, can challenge the people in their own party. Like, I do that all the time because, like, yes, technically I'm a Republican because I'm very conservative. The Republican Party has a lot of issues, and to ignore those is idiotic. It doesn't help anybody, because you're letting criminals get away with crime just because they're your friends. Horrible logic. Gonna bite you in the butt all the time in the future, and it doesn't help the American people. Letting disingenuous people run the country just because they're like on your team, not a good look, not smart, not compassionate. And it proves that you have a weak moral conscience because you are incapable of calling out the people on your side. And we shouldn't only call it the people on our side, right? Like, I find much more problems with the left, but fair is fair. When the left points out something wrong with conservatives, like, it's the duty of the good conservatives to agree. Like, this idea that neither side can make a good point to the other one is silly. Like, I think most of the time Democrats are very, very right about their problem diagnoses. When they see a problem in society, right? Like, there's a mental health crisis. Like, they were the first ones talking about that. Good point. Their solutions are terrible, in my opinion, but they are good at identifying problems. And it's like, I can give them that. I can say, hey, yeah, let's like we agree on the problem. That's good. Like, there's some problems we agree on. Let's talk about that and find solutions. Republicans don't want to do that. They just say, if a Democrat says it, it's wrong. And that's what's destroying the country. That's what's tearing it apart. Is like blind party faith, blind party outrage at the other party. And so that's why the Republican Party is dying, is because people are realizing that that's idiotic. It's like loyalty to the party before your own faith. Like, really? That's the most disgusting thing I can think of if you're coming from a moral perspective. Like, abandon God for the party. It's silly. And they all get up there and they say, oh, I believe in God, and okay, practice what you preach. Treat it seriously. Don't read a scripture quote like it's the first time you've ever read one. And I'm not here to insult anybody's faith journey and anybody who is seriously, some people just don't know. Some people have never read the Bible, but they have interest in Christianity, and you shouldn't gatekeep to that level and say you can't be at a level of poor intellect when it comes to Christianity if you're striving for it. Everybody starts at zero. That's how it works. But I'm saying the disingenuousness of a lot of our politicians to, in one moment, quote scripture, and then in the next moment say that God gets in the way of making moral decisions and live out that action. That's ridiculous. And it's destroying the party. It's destroying the seriousness of Christianity. That's what's eating away at Christianity. And so that's why the last remaining Holy Catholic Apostolic Church is what's going to take the reins back from Protestantism, from evangelicalism. It's going to take the reins and solidify its place in the West and say, we've had enough. It's the sleeping giant. Catholicism has been the West since the inception of the West. It has been the core religion. And that is going to reawaken. And that reawakening is going to be massive. Massive. You're not going to recognize the West in 100 years. We're going to have a huge reversal of all this stuff. Kick out all these foreign entities that are living in our worldview, living in our world, right? So this, the whole concept of the corrupt elites, people who abuse other people immorally, these virtues of modern day America in the West, of liberalism, not like the political, but like not the party affiliation, but the concept of liberating yourself. We liberated ourselves from God. We've liberated ourselves from sexuality. We've liberated ourselves from the family. Those like virtues, like that, and like democracy, like our hollow democracy. It's like, give me a break, guys. It's a way of voting. It's like, it's a fancy way of saying raise your hand if you support this. Like, that's what democracy is. It's a mechanism. It's not sacred. And so these like virtues of the Western world, the modern Western world, they're gonna die. Like, they're all gonna get kicked out. They're gonna get thrown out because they don't work. Relativism doesn't work. And underneath everything, like buried between those many layers of Western thought and ideal, Catholicism. It's been the basis of everything. Everything. That is Western thought. And that's one reason Islam's not going to win in the end. Like, it's going to take some people, it's going to grow, but it's not ours. It's not the basis of Western thought. It's the basis of Middle Eastern thought. Like, very different things. Like, when you get to the core of Islam, like, it is not compatible with Western life at all. And if places not in the West want to, practice Islam, like, that is their purview. That's to each people has the right to seek their own destiny. That includes religion, that includes culture, that includes us not bombing them because they don't want democracy. Everybody has the right to seek their own destiny. That's what it means to have like this good neighbor policy. It's like, I may not like what you do, and I certainly don't want it over here, but it's not my duty to go and force you to do what I want you to do either. The same way I don't want you to force me to do what you like, which is what's happening right now in the West, right? This forced cancel culture, this forced liberalism, those ideas are going to get kicked out. And what you need to do that is you need a strong basis of faith that extends beyond death, right? Like, it does not matter what happens to me in this life. I will fulfill my duty to God and to my people. And if I die, well, we're all going to die anyways, but I died fulfilling my duty. And that is what's going to destroy all these ideals. That's what's going to save America. That's what's going to save the West, is the seriousness of which we take our religion. And I think that CANDACE OWENS is just the start. And I think if you pay attention, you can see the seeds, right? Like, a lot of times when you look back at history, if you're reading it from a textbook, things just happen. Like big events happen on a timeline we look at. But if you look back a couple decades prior, each time there's a big change, there's a lot of seeds that were planted. And there's a lot of signs. And there's a lot of signs happening right now. If you look at social media, like especially young people, like Gen Z speaks a different language. If you're over the age of 40, like good luck deciphering that. But it's worth looking into, because like, and that coherent worldview I was talking about, you have like religion, Christianity at the center, but you have like weightlifting culture. Well, that's weird. Like, that's not always been the same thing, right? But you have this like overlap of like hardcore weightlifting culture, masculinity, and Christianity. That's a good thing. You're getting kind of a slight overlap between the hardcore naturalists and Christianity, like the holistic people, right? We're realizing now, like, more holistic living. If you have a problem with your body, if you have a problem with your mind, maybe try to solve the problem instead of mask it with drugs. A lot of that's kind of coming up. And then so you're getting these like groups of people, these pockets that are kind of forming this coherent worldview. Even like the anime, like, it's kind of silly. It's like but the anime community is kind of like, them in the weightlifting community is like that now. And that's like kind of becoming like with the Christianity community. It's like, well, why is that? It's like, well, Japan's a homogenous country with solid morals, very rigid structure, hierarchical society. Yeah, and I agree with your comment here. Yeah, that the hierarchy is very important in the church because you have a unified message. Like, there's no misinterpretation, and the misinterpretation is squanched really quickly. Like, if you say something out of line, it's like you're wrong. You are objectively wrong because the church has like these belief systems. It's not up to personal interpretation, because the Bible was never meant to be up to personal interpretation. And there's no person alive who's ever lived, who will ever live, who is capable of deciphering the entire Bible by themselves, and beyond the Bible, all of Christianity, like our entire ethos. No one's that smart. I'm not that smart. No one's that smart. I'm smart enough to understand when much smarter people have spent their entire lives figuring this stuff out. Like, you look at the writings of like St. Augustine and St. Thomas and all these people, that's the collective knowledge of the church. And that's the basis, is like, if you don't perfectly speak Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew and Latin, and like, you'll never know the full context of every piece of the Bible. Like, you also need to know all the social context of what was happening 2,000 years ago. And you have to understand the layered context of every single Bible quote and how they relate to each other, and the social consequence of like everything that has to do with it. Like, no person is smart enough to interpret that themselves. Let's not pretend that anyone is capable of that. That's why we have the church. It's important because it gives us that collective base of knowledge. And these ideas like have been tried and tested, right? Like, fought against each other. We've had, countless heresies, right, that have been determined by the church to be wrong through intense scrutiny and thought. And so that like appeal to authority, that like seriousness, is a rock you can tie yourself to. And it's that worldview that I was talking about is I can trust in something that's beyond myself. I don't have to figure everything out myself. Isn't that great? It's like when you go to your parents and you ask your parents a question because you're dumb and you're a dumb kid, and you can trust their input. Like, you can trust their experience. You're not alone in this. And that's the church. It's had 2,000 years consisting of some of the smartest people who have ever lived have been, devout theologians in the Catholic Church. And so an important part of the church, and this may sound a little unsettling to people who are not Catholic, but bear with me, is this belief that like the church is right and you're not right. Like, you're wrong if you disagree with the church. Well, that leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, because they're like, well, what if, the church is wrong? But like, take a breath and let's think about this. How many times when you were like a kid did you believe something the complete opposite of what your parents told you, or your teachers, or whoever, any older adult, right? You're like, I'm right and you're wrong. And your parents are just like, well, wait and find out. Why? Like, this is a stupid rule. Like, why do we have this rule? I don't like this rule. Like, why can't I walk around at night at like 11 p.m.? It's a stupid rule. Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And your parents are like, it's not good for you. And you don't understand. Like, you're not capable of understanding at that point in time the value of that rule. It's the same thing with the Catholic Church, is you have to look at it and take a deep breath and say, I don't understand this. Whatever rule I'm struggling with, whether it be about homosexuality or the necessity of Mass or prayer or anything, you say, I don't get it. I don't understand this. And you can go and ask for an explanation, because we have those in the Catholic Church. But you have to admit, I might not know. I might not see the value of this lesson here. I might not see the value of this rule. I've never needed it, right? The rule hasn't protected me in my eyes. I've never gotten into a situation where you look back and say, oh, that's why that rule happened. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't realize how bad that was. And so there's this deferment to the Catholic ideology, the Catholic worldview. I can live my life with a basis and a collective knowledge that is definitive. I can export some of my thinking. I export my thinking because I've done a lot of scrutiny of the Catholic Church, being Catholic. I've done a lot of like research of myself, and you fact check things too. But if you hit a decision and you don't have enough time to like think about it critically for like a long period of time, spend a lot of time praying or thinking, you just say, I'm going to follow what the church says, and I will later get back and research that and make sure I made the right decision. But you have that ability. You can defer. You can defer your knowledge and use 2,000 years of knowledge as a basis for decisions. That clears away so much like about thinking you have to do. And I'm not saying thinking is bad. Don't get that twisted. I'm saying you don't have to figure out everything yourself. You don't have to figure out everything yourself. You learn from other people's failures and you learn from other people's successes, just like you learn from your own. There's a lot of failures and a lot of success stories throughout the history of the Catholic Church, throughout the history of Christianity, throughout the history of this entire world. And it's a basis that's definitive, and you can go and say, this is always right and this is always wrong, right? Morality is always right and always wrong. Making these decisions is either always right and always wrong. It's way above a personal experience of somebody in your life saying, this worked for me, but that's not a guarantee it'll work for you. A lot of times we base our decisions on things that work for other people, and sometimes people do bad things and it just doesn't catch up to them right away. And you do it and you get like smacked right away, like that was a bad idea. And so you want to have something that's beyond just one person's deciphering worldview, one person's interpretation of the Bible, one person's advice. You want to tether yourself and give yourself that ability that, like what I was talking about earlier with like children. Like the reason children can go out in the world and they're more successful if they have rigid structure. Because in between that rigid structure is when they can explore the world safely. Like Jordan Peterson, I was listening to him before and he was saying that like you have, as like a child feels safest when they can leave the comfort and they can look back at mom and then go a little further and they can look back and the mom's still there and go a little further and I fall down and then you run back to mom because she's still there. But it gives you that freedom. And so that the Catholic Church is that anchor, that rock, that tether. Like I can go and I can try my own thing. If it doesn't work, I can run back to God. I can I can try to figure something out. I can like defer to them and then like accept that maybe I don't understand this fully, whatever it is. And that gives you so much peace of mind, so much comfort, so much like it's in God's hands. It's in the church, like it's in the church's hands, then it's in God's hands, right? Like you have somebody who's looking out for you, who you can always run back to on this earth, right? Like you should always be praying. You should always have a solid relationship with God and Jesus and clearly the Holy Spirit. But you have physical people here who believe the same things you do. There's no differing ideology because it's like you're right and you're wrong. It's not a different personal interpretation. So there's this comfort in running back and saying, I don't know what's wrong here. I'm doing something wrong. Or you're struggling, and when you're struggling with something specifically, you can go to somebody who has the exact same beliefs as you, who can see it from a different perspective. It's not just your friend who's kind of good, but they're not religious at all. Like they're going to give you advice that's not religious advice. It's not going to be as helpful as somebody who believes the same things as you do. And when you're just in that pit, you're just having a dark time, you're in desolation. You have a friend who believes the same thing, who can look at you and say, you're thinking about this the wrong way, because we think of the same thing. Like we know the same thing. You just like what's going on in your life has blinded you. You can't see it right now, but trust me, this is what we know is right. That's so powerful. It's so safe. It's something that gives you that security. And it's an irreplaceable kind of community. And so that is like so alluring to people. It's so alluring to young people. And that's why I see like the people who are devoted are really devoted. You look at the Catholic Church now, the amount of people who are Catholic is shrinking. And Christians in general, like Christianity, the amount of people is coming down. It's like, okay, so why do you have this belief that things are going to get better? Well, here's an interesting statistic. Mass attendance has gone down. Now, that sounds like a bad thing. Well, daily mass attendance has gone up. So what does that tell you? Yeah, there's a lot less people. A lot of the fringe people, the flakes, they left. But the people who are in it are really in it. Like, they're all in. Like, daily mass. That's a big deal. That's a big commitment. An hour a day of something. Having to go out of your way to do that, right? Like, that's a commitment. That's not just like, oh, I go to Sunday mass because my parents want me to, and like, oh, I probably should, or, you know, I just want to go to flirt with girls. Like, there's a commitment that's like way beyond that. That's proof it's like that the people are solid. And a convicted minority will always beat out a passive majority. Like, people who have a direction, like, they're always going to be out the majority, right? Like, an uninformed majority will always lead to an informed minority. That's been proven by that, like, the psychological study of that game Werewolf, you know, or that, like, an uninformed minority will always, or an informed minority will always beat an uninformed majority. And so this solid, like, informed, like, God is real. These things work. This is how we should base our life on. This is what we should base our politics on, our rules, our laws, you know, culture. Those people who have that strong conviction, they spread it. They live it. They say this is right and this is wrong, and I'm going to objectively, unabashedly say that. And so that's how the conviction spreads. Like, weak passive Christianity has not spread. That's why it's dying, is because it's like, I go to mass on Sunday or go to church on Sunday, and then I could skip a week because who cares, right? I just go, you know. There's no conviction. And so as the leaves fall off and die, you're just conserving your energy for the winter through that storm. And we're entering that spring of Christianity, the spring of Catholicism, where that conserved energy, that small vocal minority that has carried that torch all the way from Jesus till now, it's about to branch out again. And that's going to be really, it's going to be a sight to see. It's going to be really amazing how that intervenes in politics. I'm very excited to see that, because you'll have Christianity that is based on Christianity, like the conservatism, that it's based on Christianity, not based on the Republican Party, you know, not based on grifting, right? Like, there's so many grifters. That's like the most common political insult, is just to call someone a grifter, because it's kind of true, right? Like, they don't say what they believe, they say what they think their audience would like, and they just have no conviction. And so going forward, that you're going to see that conviction, and especially these young people, like, and it doesn't hurt that the countercultural thing to do, which young people always want to do, the countercultural thing, is to be like a diehard conservative Christian, is like the countercultural thing to do. It really proves your mettle as a man to stand up against an institution, to stand up against authority, to stand up against, like, countless hordes of mindless people, and say, I'm right and you're wrong, right? Like, that's the test of masculinity. And a lot of people want to test that masculinity, right? Like, a lot of boys want to do what you're not supposed to do and kind of poke the bear. But what's different about this countercultural is it's countercultural, but it's also rooted in the truth. Like, it is the truth. Like, people figure it out, and it's the truth. So even the grifters and the people who are just in it for, like, socially, right? Like, you know, I like the memes. I do it for the memes. You know, I like the Catholic workout memes. Like, that got me into this or that, right? Like, those people, they'll do it as like a grift, you know, or because it's funny, or because it's like a hobby and it's interesting and it's attractive. But since it's rooted in the truth, the digger down you deep, you like, the digger deep you go and figure out this stuff, like, in order to fulfill your grift, you know, you got to pretend to go to mass, right? Like, you got to pretend to go to adoration, you got to pretend to pray the rosary. You actually kind of have to do those things, like, publicly, but when you do them, you're like, oh, there's something to this. Like, you read your Bible and you're like, oh, there's something here. Like, it's got some good stuff in it. Like, maybe I should read it a little bit more seriously. And so the grift becomes a reality because it's rooted in the truth. Like that fundamental basis is there. Like your exploration into the truth, whether genuine or ungenuine, is going to result in like discovering what the truth is. That's what's great about the truth. It's there. It's a reality. It's fact. And so I think that's going to be a component of it. That's going to be interesting. Is you'll see a lot of people like switch over who are disingenuous. But like I said, if you want to be part of the club, like you're going to be Catholic. That's what's going to happen in the future. Is the party becomes Catholicism, and then you kind of get on board. And like if you're a grifter, you kind of get on board. But that helps grow it. But what's good is it's not left into personal interpretation. It's not left to the changing whims of a political party. If a bunch of grifters enter and they want to change things, sorry, there's a definitive religious authority that says no. The rigidity and the hierarchy of the Catholic Church says no. Like, you don't get to grift here. You don't get to change things. Like, we're not up to changing. We don't do that. And that is going to solidify this movement. That's going to prove the rock that it is. You know, the rock that Jesus built his church on Peter. That's what this rock is. And I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to happen way faster than people think. Because this, like, I mean, some credit where credit's due about like Andrew Tate and some of these guys is they've really like woken up a lot of people to like, the way you're living is not right. That doesn't mean a different way of living is going to be right. Like, converting to Islam is not the right thing to do. It's better, but it's not like the right thing to do. But at least most people acknowledge that what's happening right now, the way most people live, is not right. Something's wrong. I need to look for something else. And then you're gonna have two big billboards, you know, which way, Western man, Catholicism or Islam. There's your two choices. And the more people who convert, who openly are, you know, kind of shilling these religions, the more people are gonna switch over. And I think the more you're gonna have these like religious confrontations, like these religious conversations, because first battle, seriousness. Which religions are serious? Catholicism, Islam. Narrows down your choices. After that, then you're going to get into more like ideological things as you like go up, and then Catholicism beats out Islam in the end, because the basis of truth is much stronger, the history is much stronger, the tradition is much stronger, the evidence is clearly much stronger. The fact that we're already a underlying Christian nation, whether people accept it or not, they still follow Christian morality. Whether you're atheist or not, you follow Christian morality because you're socially conditioned to. Because our entire society, our entire way of Western thought is based on Christianity. It's in our blood. It's in every document we write. It's the basis of how we interact with things in our world. It's how we see our world. That's going to beat out Islam in the end. In the West, at least. I'm not hopeful about like going over to the Middle East and changing their mind. Not my prerogative at the moment. But as far as one solid ideal movement, like shifting the Overton window back from like far left to like far right, is going to be Catholicism. It's going to beat out Islam in the end. And that snap's going to happen really fast, right? Like, you talk to like, you see like Republican boomers talking, and not to rag on the boomers too much, but it's kind of fun too. But you see like the Overton window it's like way over here, like way off screen. And they're like, oh, we're going to like nudge it. We're going to nudge it back. And our ultimate goal is to get back to Ronald Reagan times, right? Like the best times in human history was Ronald Reagan, right? Like, yeah, he was good. He was okay. He was kind of mid. But so like, that's like the boomers' dream is to like go back to like 1950s America. Like that's the pinnacle of human achievement. And no, it's not going to happen. What's going to happen is when you wake up, you don't like nudge awake, right? When you're on this side, you're like you're a 14-year-old boy who grew up in the Midwest in the United States or whatever, and you're on TikTok and you're vaping and you're watching porn and you're like eating terribly, you know, like, your entire life is just kind of a disaster waiting to happen, and you wake up one day and you realize you're miserable. Like this is what Andrew Tate teaches and what's actually true. Like you realize everything's a lie. Like there's the Matrix. Like this is not unintentional. Like somebody's intentionally orchestrating this level of misery. Like this doesn't happen in a vacuum. And everything I'm doing that I'm encouraged to do to have a like successful life, as like a fulfilled life as like a Western person, you know, like watch pornography, cheat, you know, like all about sex, like eat terrible food, like stay up all the time, yeah, religion's bad, you know, don't exercise, that makes you racist, you know, whatever the flavor of the week, dumb, baseless thought processes. When you wake up from that, you like snap over to the right. Like it's not a like, maybe like I think you know John McCain was a very good thought leader. It's like, no, you go full right. Like that's why you're getting the far right. Is people wake up and it's maybe a little bit of an extreme adverse reaction, but that's how adverse reactions happen. It's like an extreme like snap. It's like we've seen that throughout human history. We've seen that in history in regards to the sensation of disgust. So like when a society gets to this point where it's like disgusting, like literally disgusting, like there's poop on the sidewalks in LA and homeless people everywhere, you know, doing drugs, having open air sex. When it's that disgusting, the human response politically and like literally of disgust is like happens in the same part of the brain. It's attached. So you look at disorder, and the solution for disorder is order, right? Like the reason humans have a sense of disgust is like, disgust is dangerous. A rotting corpse carries disease, right? So like rotten food is disgusting. It's not safe, right? Like uncleanly places carry disease. It's unsafe. I don't want to be here. It smells bad, looks bad, you know, it's gross. That revulsion, that disgust happens politically too. And when you walk into a room that's like a hoarder's mess and it's disgusting, right? You're not like, well, each week I think I'll pick up 2 things from the floor and slowly over time I'll clean things up. It's like, no, you go in there with a hazmat suit and you just burn the place down, right? Like you rip up everything and you're washing down the walls and you're washing down the ceiling, and like everything needs to be cleaned immediately. We need order. Like this is disgusting. And that happens with politics too. And that's what's happening now, is that immediate snapback, which like the Republicans don't understand. They think they're gonna be like, oh yeah, we're going back to Ronald Reagan. It's like, no, like Ronald Reagan, if he's right in the middle, which he's probably further left than where we're gonna end up, considering if he was the middle, like we're not going back to the middle. Like we're going, it's a rubber band. You know, you wake up and you're like, everything is a lie, I live in the Matrix, and then you go, and that's what's happened with all like the Tate like followers. And again, like Andrew Tate's not the best role model in the world. I know a lot of people who like disavow everything he does. I see him as like a useful intro to this kind of process of waking up, and it's about your priorities, right? Like my number one priority and how I see value in like speakers is this, the number one problem is young people are killing themselves at a faster rate than ever before. That is the big problem. How can we keep young people from killing themselves? That's like my main concern. And so when I see someone like Andrew Tate, who like, if you follow everything he does, like your life's gonna be a mess for different reasons, but he's got some good things, like exercise, have some faith, like treat people with respect. I mean, he says that, doesn't always do it, but you know, have a purpose, make money, like get detached from the system because you're a debt slave. Like there's some good stuff in there. There's some nuggets of wisdom for sure. And if you're like a middle school guy or a high school guy, you're not gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm flipping through my Instagram and I see a Father Ripperger clip or a Jordan Peterson clip. Typically, like Jordan Peterson's the next level up from Andrew Tate if you're talking in like succession of like intellectual entrance to like gateway to higher intellectual thought on these issues. But like, you know, you see like an Andrew Tate clip and you're like a 14-year-old guy and you think it's funny, and then you're like, oh, like actually that's kind of a good point, maybe I should start working out. And that gets you on that pipeline, and that moves fast. It moves very fast in that direction. And that's what I think is going to happen, is like, and that's why Andrew Tate's woken so many people up to this like whole Matrix thing, and he's still kind of around, but like other better people are taking his place in this world of like you're getting more Catholic speakers, you're getting more like solid Christian speakers, you're getting more solid conservative speakers who are coming up and having a bigger influence. And so he really started the gateway, and obviously like he converted to Islam, which is not like, it's leading a lot of people in that direction, but again, I don't think that's going to win out in the end. But it just goes to show, like, if you look at the Tate people, look at where they are, like beginning to like now, they're very different. Their lives are completely overhauled. It's not a slight nudge, not a slight movement, like everything all at once. Like, I need to fix my life all at once, everything about it. And that's what's going to happen in the West with just everything in general, but this like new emergence of Catholicism, this new emergence of religion in general, and like conservative worldview, is we're not going back to Ronald Reagan. Like, we don't go backwards, we go forwards. We push through these bad times to get to better times and like new ideologies. And I don't even like those, you know, I'm sure they were okay, but I want to build a cohesive worldview. Like, that includes everything, that includes the modern problems of our time. Things like the AI, you know? 50s didn't have an answer for that. Like, there's, you know, like the AI pornography, that's a big thing. Social media, the food, the diet. I mean, this week a couple states were talking about banning certain food dye additives. That's a big conversation, right? Like our diet is literally poison. Like, most people are figuring that out now. And so it's like there's these major problems that were always on the back burner, but like have come to the surface as like this, like something's got to be done about this. And like snapping back to Ronald Reagan era is not going to fix any of those, because I never thought about any of those. And you need a new cohesive worldview. You need to build a worldview from the ground up. Conservatives just have this like way of thinking with blinders on. They're like, I want to go back to something that worked at a period in time. It worked at a period in time, but that doesn't mean it's always going to work for every situation. Certainly not going to work for this situation that we're in right now. Like, we can't snap back, and we can't keep putting band-aids on things, right? Like, Republicans want to put band-aids on things. It's like, no, we need a new ground up, like, this is what I believe. Everything I believe, I need to be able to explain with reason. Everything I want to have done, I need like a cohesive worldview to have it done. And the cohesive worldview needs to tackle things other than like the mainstream issues. Like, we got to talk about these things that are not prevalent, right? Like, what are you going to do about the microplastics? Like, that's a real question. What can you do about the microplastics? You gonna ban plastics? Like, you can't ban plastics, but like, can you ban it in some things? Does every bottle have to be glass now? Like, maybe that's a conversation we should have. When have you ever heard of a Republican talk about bringing back glass bottles? And I'm not saying we should, but it's like conversation. Like, let's have a conversation about that. Maybe it's a good possibility. And that's like, that's not what Republicans want to do. It's like, pass one bill and we'll fix everything. It's like, no, like there's a lot of things that need to be done that are going to be like single issue things that are like very niche issues that like are not going to be tackled by following like the Republican mantra anymore. And so these young groups of people are more free thinking because they're not party affiliated. They're conservative in ideology. Their ideology is rooted in something beyond party, which is their religion, and that's like branching out. And their worldview is building out from the religion, which is like, that's fundamentally what you want to have happen, because like, if you believe God's real, God is the creator and basis of the universe, all laws are based on what God instructed them to be, which includes morality. And so things are right or wrong based on how you live and like based on what God had deemed them to be. And so if you're not living in right relation, you're not properly ordered. It's a big part of the Catholic Church is your life should be properly ordered. If you're not properly ordered, like, you're gonna have a bad time and it's gonna lead to disaster. And like, I cannot think of many more times in history that were as disordered as we are now. You know, like, talk about the fall of the Roman Empire in ancient Greece, and those are some good examples, but now is a pretty bad time as well. We're very disordered. We don't know which way is up. Like, you can't even tell the difference between a boy and a girl anymore. Like, there's no order, there's no structure, there's no basis. But when you get those things, you can start addressing these issues that fall through the wayside, right? Like every issue is important. To only tackle the big issues is silly. It's not what a good ruler does. I think it's like soil quality. Like, that's a big conversation we should have. Like, the soil quality in America is going down. Our food's bad because it doesn't have nutrients as well. Like, yeah, there's the pesticides and stuff, which is kind of being talked about now, about the food quality and all the additives, but like, what about our soil? What about how we treat farmers? We're not treating farmers very well. We strangle them with regulations, inflate the prices of everything, all their equipment. There's zero respect for them anyways and what they do. It's problems like that it's like, oh, no, we don't need to worry about that. It's like, no, you need to worry about everything. No matter how small the issue is, eventually it'll become a big issue if left alone. It's like any disease. You leave it alone and it's going to come back and it's going to be a bigger problem. And the only way to tackle small issues like that is to rely on your worldview, which is based on something, based on morality, based on a religion, that helps influence your decisions on these things. Because it's not a buffet. This world is not a buffet. Like, morality is not a buffet. You can't just pick things you support personally as like a Republican, like random Republican supports X things and your colleague supports X things and they're different. It's like, you're right or wrong on these issues. And it's like, there's a morality basis for a lot of these things as well. Like I said, that your relationship with nature is a big part of these conversations in respect to things like the microplastics and like our farming and stuff. And these problems become a lot easier to solve when you can defer that knowledge, that expertise. You can defer that ideal world to the world God intended. If God intended a world and you strive for that world to rightly order yourself to it as much as possible, it's going to be a lot more successful, right? Like, that just makes sense. And so first we need that rightly ordered worldview, we need the religion, and then we can push out and start solving these issues that are making life harder for people, way harder than necessary. And I see things all the time where it's like, no one's talking about this. It's like maybe it's a silly issue to some people, but it means the world to other people. I saw something that was a guy on TikTok, and it was I guess he does like construction of guardrails on highways. And I think it was his daughter who died in an accident where the guardrail was not installed correctly. She hit it, it failed, she went over the cliff and she died. Should not have happened. And like, he goes around and like inspects these things and like makes videos about how they're not installed properly sometimes, and there's not like uniform measurements for these things. And it's like, that is such like a small problem that we would look at that as like a small problem in the grand scheme of like a country. It's like, okay, but like, why do we let it happen? Why do we let like there to be ununiform guardrails? Like, as silly as that sounds, as small as that sounds, it's like, this matters a lot to people. Like, it's literally a life or death difference for a lot of people. And that's all these small issues. We look at small issues. It's like, as a good ruler, you should strive to fix the small issues with the big ones. You should strive to always be finding things to solve, problems to fix. Always trying to improve things. This ideology of like soul maintaining our beliefs from 50 years ago, 80 years ago, whatever, go back to Ronald Reagan, it's not going to work because they never solved those problems. That's why we're here. We're here because they didn't solve those problems. And those were the big ones. Forget about the small ones. They didn't even mention them. And a lot of them didn't even exist yet. We have new problems now. We have new problems. We have new people. We have new challenges all over the world. We need a new ideology to push us forward. And we need to start solving what we can. We need to start doing things because they're good to do, not just because they're profitable, right? Like, morality insists that you do things because they're the right thing to do, not just because you can make money out of it, and not just because you'll get reelected. The whole like Republicans just wanting to be reelected it's true, right? Like, all politicians want to be reelected, but should they? And I think it was maybe I'm drawing a blank here, but I think it was Plato who said like the number one requirement for being a good ruler, being a good leader, is not wanting to lead, right? And all our leaders want to do is lead and get more power. It's like, what you want is these young, hyper-religious people to serve their time, who are willing to be like Candace Owens and say whatever's on their mind, and get removed from office or their job or whatever because they're saying the truth. Like, it should almost be standard to run for like one term in office, because you'll make so many people upset you'll never get reelected. Because if you make a lot of people in America upset, you're probably doing your job right. You know, like especially people in your own party. Like if you're doing things actively, you're gonna make a lot of people upset. Like look at Trump. Like Trump made a ton of people upset. Did he have reasons he made people upset that were justified? Yeah. Like he's definitely said some things that made people upset, rightfully so. But he also like attacks Republicans. He tries to solve some issues correctly. He tries to actually think outside the box a little bit. You know, he's far from perfect. He's far from the best leader we could get, but like he's doing something. He's trying to like break away from the party and just like getting reelected in this endless cycle of lobbying and like selling your soul to a political party for power. It's like he's somebody who's actually trying to do something about this. And I think we're going to see that more with more and more young people as we move forward through these times. You're going to get more and more devoted Christians who step up and are willing to sacrifice it all, you know, leave it all behind for what's the right thing to do. And that right thing to do is going to expand beyond these big issues to these small ones and create this coherent worldview and like an ideal for society. Like I have a functioning ideal for what I would want our society to look like. I have, and it's work, and I'm working on it, right? Like I'm still young, I'm still taking in information and having conversations and building like I could write a 200-page document on what I want to see a society to look like. If I had to like make me emperor for, you know, however long and give me like, you know, say give me full control, like a thought experiment, right? Do this yourself. If you had full control, what would you change? You might hit the big ticket issues, and it's like, okay, then what? Like you have total control. What other problems are to solve? What are problems you've never thought of? What are problems you never thought could be fixed that you could solve, you could do? And you'll find very quickly that you hit a dead end on there's not that many things you've really thought about that need to be fixed. But there's countless problems. There's countless things that affect people's daily lives in serious, meaningful ways. And the Republicans don't have that. They haven't like built and like struggled, and it's like, we need, like, this is my worldview, like this is my entire thing. Like if you went to any of the people at like the Daily Wire, like if you went to Matt Walsh and you're like, Matt Walsh, write me down if you could create a society ground up, like culture, language, time preference, you know, how you view nature, how you feel animals, all the rules, like build me your worldview ground up. Like if you were emperor for a day, what would you do? Like everything. I don't think you could. I don't think a lot of Republicans could. I think they put band-aids on issues. I think they see something that's like right in front of their eyes, and then they say, okay, I'm going to solve this issue right now, and then we'll solve this issue right now. And they're never like working towards something. The only thing they ever work towards is undoing what the Democrats did, or like fighting over the same issue for the last 100 years. They're not like, I want to work towards this like idea of paradise on earth as close as we can get it. Obviously we'll never get total paradise, but things could be a lot better. You know, like things can always be better. You can always be striving to have a better society that helps people more than it hurts them, that like life can be easier. It doesn't have to be this hard. And we have the technology, we have the intellectual capability, we've had the years of thought to improve things, but we never try to work towards an ideal anymore. We just work towards policy. And a lot of times we work towards policy that gets you reelected, which is even worse. And I think that's a major flaw. I'm in both political sides of the aisle, obviously more familiar with the Republican side, and I think we have to have these conversations on the Republican side in order to trim the fat and weed out the grifters and actually build a party that is, you know, talk about like the church in the past. You condense it, to like the good solid people, and then you can expand out again. You know, this would not, there should be a cohesive worldview that is agreed upon. It shouldn't just be a bunch of random people with random interests, especially if they're paid interests, and come together to call themselves like a political party. That's not the ideal we should strive for, and that seems to be not exactly controversial to say, but it's just never said. Like, people don't say that, really. American politics is silly in that way. And so this, all of that to say that as we get this growing ideology based on religion, based on this return to Catholicism, this newfound belief in Catholicism by all these young people who are converting, by these solid political thinkers who are converting, the more high-level conversations we have about this, the more we base this on, we can create a worldview that works for people, that works for humans, that like is rightly ordered to God's design for the universe. You know, looking at problems like how we deal with nature, right? Like, one of the things is like we're the stewards of nature, and we can actually make decisions. Like, we can make decisions about how we deal with certain animals or invasive species, or our relationship to genetically modified organisms. Like, on the face, it's not saying all those are bad, but you have to have a conversation about like, when are we playing God and when are we just like stewarding, right? Like, selective breeding is stewarding, but is the genetic modification too far? And in what circumstances is it too far? And what good is this going to bring people? You know, like, maybe put people at the forefront instead of money, and instead of getting reelected. Maybe, like, are we poisoning our own people with our food? Maybe that's not a good idea. I don't know. It's so silly. Like, it's so silly to talk about, right? Because most people like have never ever thought about that, and they just don't even like consider it. So we will see. And I don't think this is going to be the last person to publicly convert this year. I think there's going to be a lot more people, and I think this is the start of something good, and you'll see more and more people do it, and it'll happen at an exponential rate. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be talking about issues like this pretty consecutively from now on. I'm planning on having a lot more live streams, and if you ever want to comment anything, I'll happy to address it. Any questions, anything. Want to make this like an open dialogue, because I said we're trying to build a coherent worldview here, a coherent ideology to strive for, and that takes in information from all sorts of places and all sorts of people. That's what having conversations for the purpose of building an ideology is. So I want to appreciate everyone who watched. I want to thank you very much. I'd love to hear your comments, your opinions, criticisms, all that down in the comments below, and I'll make sure to let you know next time I have another live stream. So on that note, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.